Hello, everyone. I can see that people are now starting to come in. Welcome to storytelling time on day 4 of National Hedgerow Week. It's really great. We're just going to have a few moments because we've got people who are joining, and it takes just a moment for everybody to get in. If you want to share where you're coming from in the chat box, do so. It's always lovely to see where people are joining us from. Hello, welcome those who are just joining. Just give everybody a few moments to get in. Welcome to the storytelling time on day 4. It's day 4 of National Hedgerow Week. Just give it one more moment. Welcome, everybody. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today in National Hedgerow Week, especially all our young tree champions across the UK. My name is Sarah, and I'm CEO of the Tree Council, which is a national charity that brings everybody together for the love of trees and hedgerows. Because it's National Hedgerow Week, we're focused on hedgerows today. They're so important to provide homes and corridors for birds and mammals and all sorts of other small creatures to move about across our cities and in the countryside. They provide shade, they give clean air for us to breathe, they help prevent flooding, and their beautiful blossom and berries just makes us all feel better. So it's fantastic that the Tree Council has been able to support teachers and pupils in around 2,000 schools across the country to plant their own orchards and fruiting hedgerows. And we hope there'll be lots more planted this autumn. But on to tonight's event. We're delighted this evening to welcome the amazing author, Elena Mannion, who, like us, has a huge love and passion for trees and hedgerows and all the different kinds of wildlife that live in them. So much so that she and her friend, the illustrator Erin Brown, have created 2 stunning books about trees and hedgerows. The first story is called The Happy Hedgerow, and the latest fabulous story after that is all about Old Oak and Little Acorn. They're full of the magic of the natural world, and both are bestsellers around the globe. So now I'm going to ask you to settle back comfortably, and I'm going to hand over to Eleanor for some storytelling. Over to you, Eleanor.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah and the Tree Council, for inviting me to read my story, so beautifully illustrated by Erin Brown. It's my pleasure to be here, and let's begin. I hope everybody is sitting comfortably. The sun was rising over the field. The barley was shimmering in a gentle breeze. Old Oak breathed in the cool morning air and sighed. His happiness was complete. With care, he quivered his long, sturdy arms. The other bushes and brambles answered him. The birds awoke when they felt their perches tremble. Fly to beach, little ones, and send greetings. Ask her if all is well this fine summer morning, said Old Oak. The finches and sparrows took flight. Old Oak watched as they landed softly in the long grass by beach in the far hedgerow. From their excited twittering, he knew they were all talking at once. Our venerable friend wishes you good morning and asks if all is well, they tweeted. In a few moments, they would flit and flutter their way back to the safe embrace of his arms, tweeting, Beach sends her greetings and says that all is well. And indeed, so it happened. Then they scattered to look for breakfast in the woods. Old Oak smiled. He remembered being a small but sturdy little tree long, long ago. His arms could not reach the others by his sides. Blackthorn on his left had been smaller than him. Hawthorn on his right was a tiny sapling. They had kept each other company, stretching every morning to see if their spindly fingers could meet. Old Oak had sung songs in the dark to comfort them. Then one morning he had felt a feathery touch on his side. Blackthorn had reached him at last. They were overjoyed, and when Hawthorn caught up, all three were truly together. He knew that it must be the same for every tree and bush in the row. They had become a fine, long hedgerow. As the sun rose higher, the breeze fell away, and all was still. A lady, a child, and a dog walked briskly past. Old Oak sighed contentedly. He quivered his arms and felt a tingle as his tiny friends started their wanderings. "Good morning, Mr. Shield," he said, smiling down at his handsome little friend. "Good morning, sir, and have a good day," said Mr. Shield, pausing for a moment before trundling on. "Always so polite," mused Old Oak. Just then he felt a little shudder in his roots. "What's going on down there?" he asked himself. "Has Mole lost his way?" He smiled at the thought. Early one morning, a huge harvester roared through the gap between the woods and the far hedgerow. The loud noise scattered the birds and insects into the hedgerows for safety. Old Oak sent word with a dunnock to Beech. "Old Oak says he has room for more if you are too full," she tweeted. "Please send my thanks, little one," she responded kindly. "I believe we shall manage. The grassy margins are well this year, so all will have shelter." In a few hours, all the barley had been harvested. Then the roaring machine disappeared through the gap. "I feel quite jangled," said Hawthorn. "So do I," replied Old Oak. "Every year it plays on my nerves quite terribly." He stretched his sturdy arms. His branches and leaves were tingling with little insect patterings and bending under the weight of all the birds. His heart was full. "I can indeed shelter all who need me," he thought, as two walkers came into view with baskets on their arms. "Blackberry is sad," tweeted the dunnock to Old Oak. "Why is that?" he asked. "The people took her fruit before it was at its best. She heard them complaining as they left." Old Oak was about to say something when a chill wind blew through his arms and the whole row tensed. "Dear dunnock, tell Blackberry we feel for her, but autumn will soon be here. We must brace for the final machine. It will come any day." So off the dunnock flitted to find Blackberry and deliver the message. Sure enough, late one afternoon, a tractor pulling a plough came to work the field. The gap had grown narrow, but they squeezed through. Old Oak sighed patiently. Then he must have dozed off, because when he opened his eyes, the sun had nearly set. The field had been ploughed and the tractor was heading past Beech towards the gap. Then all of a sudden the tractor stopped. The plough had become caught in the end of the far hedgerow, and old Dogrose was being pushed and pulled as the tractor tried to free the plough. Finally, with a mighty jolt, the plough passed through the gap. "Oh, I do hope the Dogrose was not harmed," fretted Old Oak. "At least now we shall have some peace." But it was not to last. Just a short while later, Old Oak saw something terrible. So terrible it made his leaves stand on end. The farmer had returned in a bulldozer, roaring into the gap. There he stopped. But seconds later, the engines started up again and the bulldozer turned into the end of the far hedgerow and began uprooting it. Pushed forwards, the bushes fell broken in the grass. In a few moments, the far hedgerow was already much shorter. All morning it shrank. Confused finches, tits and sparrows flew in their hundreds to Old Oak. "Our home's gone," cried the blue tits. "Oh dear," chattered the chaffinches. With so much noise, Old Oak found it hard to think, but think he must. "My friends, we have room for all. There is also shelter in the woods," spoke Old Oak. "Holly Blue, Peacock, please do listen. Everyone be calm and stay close together." The birds and insects quietened down. A group of sparrows flew over to the woods. By evening, there was no far hedgerow left. Their little field had become a huge field. Only Beech remained, head held high. Old Oak tried to quiver his branches gently to reassure his guests, but he was too weighed down to move. Autumn brought cloudy days and strong winds. The top of the soil seemed dry and dusty. It blew across the huge field and disappeared into the distance. That had never happened when the far hedgerow was there. Then it rained for 2 whole days. Old Oak noticed now how the huge field sloped. The water fell, and with the soil made a muddy stream. It dribbled over the line where the far hedgerow had once stood, carrying the soil away. Crops need good soil to grow, worried Old Oak, and the soil is leaving. Winter came, bitter and harsh. An icy wind blew across the huge field one day, and Old Oak felt his feathered friends gripping his arms tightly. He sent word with the sparrow to Beech. Try to be brave, spring will bring better days. But he was not sure he believed it. Beech was too alone, and the field was too big. Then one day the farmer entered the field with another man, who looked like a farmer too. They were talking, pointing and glancing at maps. When the farmers came near, Old Oak strained to listen. He heard the words buy, farm, money, and then hedgerow. He tensed his strong arms. Some sparrows flew up in alarm. The men shook hands. The farmer left and the new man was alone. He walked across the frosty field until he reached the lumpy line where the far hedgerow had once stood. He looked up and down the line. Then he followed it to the old gap and was gone. Winter passed slowly. Old Oak longed for spring and new leaves. He ached all over, and it was hard to feel cheerful when he looked at the huge bare field. But then one morning he awakened to a different feeling. A weak sun was warming his branches. The white dusting on the soil was gone. Old Oak gently shook his arms and felt the familiar little stirrings of his friends. He wasn't alone, and Beech was still there. Perhaps all would be well after all. And then he saw something. There were people where the far hedgerow had once been. One of them was the new farmer he'd seen before. They were bending over, planting something. They were planting saplings in a row. Old Oak smiled. Dunnock, fly to Beech. Perhaps she has seen already. Tell her of our happiness. It is a wonderful day. Old Oak sighed deeply and murmured to himself, the field will be a happy home again. The end. So I hope you enjoyed that.
Eleanor, that was the most beautiful story. It really is. And I'm sure that everybody who's been listening will agree. It just fills your heart with joy to hear that story and see the beautiful woodland pictures as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. We have an opportunity for people to win a couple of copies of Eleanor's latest book, which is called Old Oak and Little Acorn, which is also beautifully illustrated by Erin. So watch out on our Tree Council social media for that. And don't forget, it makes the most brilliant present. You can buy it at your local bookstore as well. Can't think of a nicer thing to find in your Christmas stocking. So thanks again to Eleanor, and thanks to Will and to Dom at the Tree Council, who have helped organise this event and kept it going behind the scenes. So big thank you to them. Thank you to all of you for joining us, and sweet dreams to everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.